Are your muscle insertions trash, or do you just have bad genetics? This is a question that I've come across numerous times, and I think at this point, people who are beginners in the gym will have a very great explanation after this video is done. This is my very first video, and I feel like uh, it's better than being able to talk on a 30-second video that you scroll past and you never, ever remember it anymore. Like, it's in fruition, it's gone. No one could even get back to it. So at this point, I feel like we need to talk, because I could do so much more explaining certain topics on here rather than doing it on TikTok where someone's not going to remember it. Most people think that they have bad genetics when they really don't have bad genetics. Let's be completely honest. Most people who are going to the gym for the very first time don't even realize that their genetics don't really play a big role into the first couple of days in their newbie gains. Your genetics don't really mean much when you're new, because you can go into the gym and you can sneeze as a newbie and gain like 10 pounds of muscle in that first year. Like, it's very likely. In my very first year alone, when I started going to the gym, I put on a good bit of mass from 135 to like 155. And I was still relatively lean. Not even relatively lean. I still had abs. I still had veins on my abs, like on my lower abs. So don't think you got bad genetics. You won't even realize you got bad genetics when you first start. If this is going to take too long for you to even watch this video, put it on 2x speed. I watch all my lectures for my classes in 2x speed. But I've gotten loads of questions over the 10 years that I've been in this fitness industry, even though I'm not really part of the fitness industry by any means whatsoever. But throughout the entire time that I've been posting online for the past 4 years, been lifting for 10 years, been putting out information even on Instagram before I was anybody, even if I'm somebody. And the question that I've gotten is, bad genetics, bad muscle insertions? Is it even worth trying to grow muscle? And if your goal is to grow muscle, then yes, it's very much worth it. You can't say that it is not. I've been doing it for like 10 years and I love it, the whole process. But I feel like something that most of society struggles with for their genetics, they tend to don't realize that newbie gains is very real. Newbie gains, even if you are fat, will happen. Sure, you can't out-train a bad diet, but you can certainly train with it and get some results from it. Now, obviously, if you're in a 10,000 calorie surplus and you're not even tracking anything, you will hinder progress. But if you're new, you're going to respond to all of the stimuli, to every bit of stimuli you put on your body. Whether you're going to be doing cardio, whether you do Pilates, CrossFit, bodybuilding, your body's going to respond to the stimuli. Your cardio is going to get better. Stamina is not going to get shot anymore. You can climb stairs all of a sudden, pick yourself up from the floor if that was something that you couldn't do. But overall, you're going to progress. So your genetics on bad muscle insertions or bad DNA from your parents won't really matter, because you're going to respond to stimuli. No matter who you are or what you do, even if you got no legs and you decide to work your arms, your friends and family will notice something different about you from January to December when holidays roll around, okay? But yeah, your genetics don't really matter when you are first starting off in the gym, because no matter what you do, you're going to grow. It doesn't matter who you are, right? I don't have to say it again. But what you got to realize is you won't even know if you got bad genetics when you first start off into the gym. You know that? You won't even realize that your biceps don't fill out entirely, or your lat insertions are just way too high or way too low, or your abs are asymmetrical English. You won't realize any of this stuff until you actually put the work in and pay the dues where it needs to be paid. How do I know this, or how would you know this? Because when you're flexing your arms, because I've been there, and you're completely new, you're flexing your tendons, you're flexing your bones. You got nothing to yourself yet. You won't know whether or not your bicep, I mean, you probably could, but most people won't know whether or not their peak will actually come up or their biceps are completely full from forearm to front delt. You won't know until you get that muscle belly bigger and thicker. The It's not something that you can see from like day one, month one, sometimes even year one, because you're inexperienced. I was at the gym the other day, and there were a group of high school kids, because it is January 1st, and everyone's crowded around the squat rack, and everyone's clanging and banging heavy weights, terrible form. We've all been there. I'm not, obviously you shouldn't do it, but I'm not saying it's a terrible thing to do. It gets you into the gym and sometimes forms a lifetime habit. But they were definitely not lifting the right way. And one of the kids was probably 110, 115 pounds, and guess what? He couldn't squat that low. He had a 10 and a 5 at the end of the bar. And his friend was telling him that he had a muscle imbalance, and they had resistance bands that they were trying to fix. I come in and be the savior as I am, completely joking, but I try to help as many people as I can when I'm in the gym within reason, because I've been there as a newbie or someone who even wants to lose fat. Like I've been there. And he's squatting down and he's not doing it right, and his friends are saying he's got a muscle imbalance, and I come in and I tell him, you don't really need a resistance band on your knees to fix the imbalance if they're caving inwards, because that's what the whole problem was when they said that he had a muscle imbalance. They said, how would I know? I said, have you squatted any time before today? He said, no, I've never squatted before. And I said, this is the first time you're doing it? Yes, this is the first time that I'm doing it. Well, it's not an imbalance that you're dealing with, it's inexperience. And they, all 5 or 6 of them were like, oh, you're right, you're right. I said, take the weight off the bar, even though it's not a lot, take the weight off the bar and get the form down first, so that a year from now, you could throw a plate on and you can probably start squatting with correct and perfect form. So they take the weight off, they take the rubber band off from their knees to fix the imbalance, and now they're squatting perfectly fine. And they said, okay, this makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you so much. We introduced ourselves, and I hope to see them in the gym from here on out. But it's something that I know will probably stick with them for the rest of their life, like I have with some of the people who intervened when I was lifting weights that have stuck with me even until now, 10 years later. But how does this correlate to bad genetics? Well, it comes down to inexperience. You won't know until you put some size on and go through it for a little while, and you see the growth and the potential that you may or may not end up having. One of the examples that I can even give to you is Nick Walker. Nick Walker, me and him are 5'7". I'm nowhere near like Nick Walker. I'm 10 years into this. I think Nick Walker's like 28 years old. Alexa, how old is Nick Walker, the bodybuilder?
According to Fandom, Nick Walker's age is 13 years.
That is not correct whatsoever. But I know that he's like what, 7 years above me or something like that. So Nick Walker and I are not the same, but we are the same height. I'm 175 pounds. He is 280 or 290, even in the off season. Dude is big. Dude has a lot of size to him. Over 100 pounds on me, okay? I can hold a dumbbell and I feel the weight of what he probably weighs, shy of like 15 pounds. Nick Walker is a specimen. If you go to his first pictures, Nick Walker was questionable. This dude's on the Mr. Olympia stage and he's questionable. He's competing and you would be like, why is this guy on stage? He doesn't have the frame. He doesn't even look that good. Look at him now. Dude is huge. Bearing in mind he's taken certain things. but he still put the work in. And at the start of his position, he certainly didn't look like someone who had great muscle bellies, great muscle size, the density, the anything. He didn't look like he had that. Sure, put him in Walmart, he probably looked better than everybody else in Walmart, but on an Olympia stage, you can see without a shadow of a doubt. I don't even think it was Olympia stage, but I'm just saying on a professional stage, you can see without a shadow of a doubt he didn't have that to him. But look at him now. Dude is massive. Dude has a lot of size on him. Dude is like, he would probably tear through my clothes, and I'm like a large, extra large. Like, he's insane. But that, again, puts into perspective when you are starting out, you will never know what you can look like, especially if you are a natural. You will never know. If this guy had gear, Nick Walker, and the years of experience and the years of hard work and the years of coaching that he has had up until this point, could say that he would look like he does today to the person that he was, I don't even know how many years ago that was, but sometime in the 2000 teens, he'd probably say, you are insane. There's no way I have that size. I know I can probably win some things, but there's no way I can grow to that. I'm only 5'7", and I'd be touching 300 pounds. That's what I want you to put into perspective. You won't even know what you could eventually look like without putting in the work. And you won't even know if you have bad genetics or bad muscle insertions. You need to put in the time, and you need to make sure you pay your dues. Even though that sounds a little cliche, you need to make sure you pay your dues so that down the line you can actually look at yourself and say, yeah, I may have good muscle genetics, good muscle insertions, and I may not. I myself, when I first started off, used to think that I had terrible leg genetics. My calves were okay, but my quads, my hammies, my glutes, they were small, including my chest. My chest is my weakest part. I've never been able to chest press heavy weights. Now I'm doing like 115 for 4 to 6 reps. Way back when, if you would have told me that I was doing that, I would have said you're crazy. I was doing, when I first started 10 years ago, I was doing like, when I first started, I was doing, I think 20 or 25 pounds on the dumbbell chest press. I didn't have a barbell at the time to be able to do weight. It was just a home gym. But I was using dumbbells between like 25, 30 pounds or something like that. And that's what I started off with. And my chest was like non-existent. If you talk to somebody, not even talking, if you look at somebody and you see their chest, their chest should have some like muscle belly. Like, I had no muscle belly, bro. There was no shape, no form, no nothing. Now, if you scroll back on my Instagram, I have like 800 something posts, and if you scroll far enough on my TikTok, you could probably see me have zero chest, okay? Look at me now. I'm not saying I look insane by any means, but I have a lot more now than when I did back then. I can do 115s now for a working set versus back then I was doing like 30, and in my mind I said my chest is small. I have no muscle size, no muscle bellies. I just have terrible chest genetics. I just have nothing there. And when I grow it out, it's gonna be smaller than the rest of everything else on my body, or just compared to everybody else that I'm comparing myself to. At the time I was watching Rich Piana, and his chest came further than his nose. Imagine sneezing and your chest just flexes and you see the veins. That's what we were watching as a teenager. So you can't say that you don't have good chest genetics, or you can't say that you have any good genetics regardless, or muscle bellies, or just anything of that matter, to the point where you're probably going to sit there and look at yourself in the mirror and feel disappointed because you don't look like Chris Bumstead, or your forearms don't look like Ramon, or I don't know who else is there. Your arms don't look like Lee Priest. Like, you're not gonna get that points immediately, especially if you're natural, and you can't compare yourself to people on the Olympia stage. Now I want you to put this into perspective. This is like the second part of the video, okay? Now let's say you're starting off in the gym, and generally speaking, you can tell you have terrible genetics all around. Your parents didn't bless you, they cursed you with terrible DNA, right? Let's take that and put that into a Walmart. You are 3 years into fitness. You have grown a little bit of muscle. You have lost a little bit of weight, whatever your goal was. You're 3 years into it. You're still relatively new, but you're starting to touch the intermediate phase. And you walk into Walmart and you look at yourself and then you look at other people. Generally speaking, you will see you probably look better than people who are not taking care of their body. Most of society doesn't take care of their body. Not to say that you will be better than the person that you're comparing yourself to by any means. I'm not saying you're going to be better than them. But what I'm saying is don't compare yourself with the Olympia level athletes or the people that you see online that are probably photoshopping themselves. Compare yourself to the average Joe. When you go to the gym, you might see some people that are better than you because you're going to a place that people are trying to better themselves or try to make themselves look good or feel good about themselves. Versus when you step out of that gym, you're now in average society. You're now in you're now in classic country. You're looking at people who probably don't take care of themselves. You're looking at people who are 40 years old and they look like they're 60. I'm not saying that is everybody, but what I'm saying is the average person doesn't work out. They will put a gym membership up on January, go for a little while, as they should, but then lose the steam because life happens or anything else happens, and it could be for any reason, but they lose the steam and they continue paying that membership. They don't go. They just continue paying that $10 a month if it's a Planet Fitness or whatever the gym that they end up going to or they used to go to. Why? Because they think they're going to go back, and I really hope they do. But you got to compare yourself with the average Joe. 3 years into fitness, you're an intermediate. You're looking at other people in Walmart, in Target, in a CVS, wherever you end up going. That's who you should be looking at to compare yourself and to compare your progress generally without saying that you're better than them, but to put your mind at ease to say, okay, I don't have to look like Chris Bumstead. I don't have to look like Ramon. I don't have to look like Arnold. I can look like myself because compared to normal other people in just day-to-day society, I look fit, I feel healthy, and this is where I'm at. Again, I'm not saying the people in Walmart or just the average Joe is terrible or they're bad for anything can happen as to why someone stops going to the gym. Injury, sickness, illness, family situations, emergencies, whatever it is. But this is the case. We wouldn't be a generally obese nation or an overweight nation if it wasn't because of this situation. So this is who you should be putting yourself or putting your shoes into, okay? You won't know if your genetics are great or you've been blessed with pretty good genetics if you keep comparing yourself with people who Photoshop on Instagram, have perfect lighting. Look, I don't know if you're driving or whatever you're doing right now and you're listening to this on 2x speed. I look flat. My light is right over here. I got another light right over there. There's no down shadow. My arms are usually my best feature. And there's like, I look tiny. But if you put me in great lighting and give me a great pump at 175 pounds for someone who is 5'7", you're going to see that I have something there, right? I have something there. And let me just fix this. You're going to see that I got something there. Oh my God, now I look dark. I shouldn't have done that. This is what happens when you deal with raw footage, right? Let's do that. We're not cutting that out. But back to it. Yeah, you can't compare yourself to other people, bro. You can't put yourself in Olympia level shoes. I lifted with a guy named King Tolo. This guy is not an Olympia competitor, but him and I are generally the same height, and he is gargantuan. He is wide. He couldn't even put his hands down underneath the bar and had to adjust his seat because he is that huge. When your muscles and everything are so dense, you can't move a certain way generally, especially if you're that big. He is just that huge. So I just want to like put it into that perspective that you don't gotta like compare yourself. You won't know whether your genetics look great or not. You won't know whether or not you can even compete on Olympia level athlete without getting a coach and putting some time into it to see where you are at. Unfortunately, that is just not how it works. When you are new in the gym as well, you are responding to stimuli that has never happened. If you are overweight, your body's going to respond accordingly. If you are trying to build muscle, your body's going to respond accordingly. Newbie gains very much exists. Even in the first 2 years, I would go and stretch it as far as like 2 years into the gym, you're still pretty much gaining newbie gains. You can't say that you're experienced if you only got 2 years under your belt and you're still continuously growing. Even if you hit a plateau in those first 2 years and then you fix that plateau and you continue going on, I would still say you are very much green and very much new in the gym because you are still gaining certain size to your frame, or you're losing certain mass on your frame because you're losing fat, right? But the last thing I want to talk about, which kind of stems off of it though, is the genetics and what looks good is in the eyes of you. The saying is cliche, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Everybody knows this. Some people like long hair, some people like short hair. Some people like others who go to the gym. Some people like others who just go for runs. Some people like brown eyes, hazel eyes. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Just as I said that you won't even know whether or not you have great genetics, I want you to look at my biceps. In great lighting, I have a nice peak. And if you want to put 3 fingers in between my bicep and my forearms, you can literally do that. You can. To some people, that just looks disgusting. People don't like the peak of the bicep. Some people think that it's terrible genetics when you have a peak and your fingers can go in between your forearm and your bicep. And some people, like me, will generally say that the longer the muscle belly in your biceps, I feel don't look that good. When people have biceps that go from the front delt all the way to the forearm and it fills out completely even when they flex. I have a friend that's his biceps. And I mean, it looks good. It looks good, don't get me wrong. When you have muscle on your frame, it's going to look good. It's going to make you look great. But in my opinion, I would rather much prefer to have short bicep peaks compared to the biceps that I see on the stage sometimes when people want a fuller looking bicep. I love the Arnold bicep. I love the biceps that pop when you're flexing. Larry Wheels is one of them. I know that he tore something, but he is a good example of what I feel looks good. So when you say that you don't look like a certain way from the genetics that you see on stage or the genetics that you see on Instagram Photoshop, you gotta stop comparing yourself with that, because why don't you start trying to see what you prefer? Why don't you start seeing whether or not your chest fills out? Some people like the small chest gap in the middle of your pecs. Some people like like me, I like the peak in the bicep rather than a full front to forearm type of full looking bicep. Some people like a tricep that's higher up in the arm rather than one that kind of fills out in photos or in your sleeves when you're flexing. All of this is just another like thing as to what is considered good genetics and what is considered bad genetics. That's just what I want you to take away from this, because what you feel looks good now probably won't look as good when you are 7 years into fitness. Your preference will change. I once thought having massive, like a turtle shell back will look great, and that's what I saw on Instagram. And then once I looked at classic physique on the stage, that's when I saw, okay, this is the type of back that I want, and I want to build that. And at this point, I feel, for someone who's natural and 10 years into it, I feel I look like a smaller version of that, but I'm getting there, and I feel like I have that look. Versus Kai Green, a back that I once like really, the mass on that back is insane. I looked at that back and I was like, I need to build it. I don't want that anymore. I don't think that looks good. I mean, it looks insane. looks insane. Props where props is due. I would never be able to build a back like that. But it's what I once wanted, and it's what I don't want anymore. Same goes for chest. I once wanted a full chest, and one that would literally close the door in the middle, like there's no line. But I come to realize that my chest doesn't do that. I have a bit of a gap in the middle, and my chest is building really well and it's full, and I definitely know that my chest genetics are not as bad as I once thought. But the preference changes because I like what I have, I see, and I don't have that full closed door gap on my chest, and that is what I'm dealing with, and that is the cards I'm dealt with, and that's what I'm just gonna take care of because I just that's what the cards that were dealt to me. Your preferences will change, and what you prefer now is not something that you will prefer later on. And what you think you look like now, you probably look a lot better than you actually do. You can't say or ignore certain things because other people on stage or Instagram Photoshop and all of this other stuff that are up there that you are looking at that are like the glory of what you're trying to achieve. You can look at it, but don't think that you're gonna. That sounds really bad. Don't think that you're going to get there. I'm not trying to say that, but most of society is not going to get there. You're going to look the best version of you, but most of society isn't going to look like a Chris Bumstead. Most of society isn't going to look even remotely good, even with the Photoshop. But remove all of that, and you will still look better than. I'm going to throw a number out there: 90% of society. You're going to look better than most people out there because you're putting in the work, and you're achieving your goals. And most of society doesn't stick with the gym long enough. Otherwise, gyms would have went out of business, in my opinion, because people forget about their memberships when they are signing up, and they lose the steam and lose all the momentum when they start seeing results or life happens or whatever happens, and they forget about going, and now they're paying for a membership. Don't compare yourself with the average person. Are your genetics bad? Do you have bad muscle insertions, or do you just are you just new? Are you new? Most of the time, 80% of the time, you're very new. Put the work in. But if you have bad genetics, you won't even know until you grow. And then once you've grown and you've gotten pretty good size and there's years under your belt, then look at yourself on the competitor level, and if it doesn't look good, scratch it. Look at yourself from a person who steps out of the gym, walks into a CVS, walks into a Walmart, a Target, and look at yourself and look at them and see where you're at on the average person spectrum, would I say, right? The spectrum. I'm going to call it that because you can't compare yourself with people who are up there versus the people who are right by your side. I'm not saying that you're better than them, but the people that are right by your side, look at that and see where you're at. And then once you see and you acknowledge that you look great, you feel great, and that you're putting in certain work that's making you look a certain way and helping you achieve your goals versus someone who doesn't really go to the gym, not that you're better, but someone who doesn't go to the gym, you'll see a huge difference because most of society doesn't really go to the gym. Most of society have a gym membership and they probably don't even go. So that is the takeaway from the video. I got nothing else to give to you. I got some other ideas that I'll talk in a different video, but that is it.